Tonight, a raid on a polygamous compound in Texas, 401 children taken into state custody.
This is about children who are at imminent risk of harm, children that we believe have been abused or neglected.
It's one of the biggest child abuse investigations ever. I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, protests extinguished the Olympic torch run in Paris. Anger over the Chinese crackdown in Tibet boils in the City of Light.
Down with the Chinese!
Next stop, San Francisco, where the protest has already started. Flying the cranky skies. A new survey says airline service is worse than ever. Plus, born in the USA, pregnant women by the thousands are crossing the border to have their children here. And you're footing the bill.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. State police in Texas are combing the rural compound of a polygamous sect tonight, where officials suspect hundreds of young people were abused. 401 children living at the compound in El Dorado are now in state custody. It's the biggest child abuse investigation in Texas history. In fact, one of the biggest ever in the U.S. Meanwhile, the whereabouts of the teenager who blew the whistle is still unclear. Hari Srinivasan is in nearby San Angelo. Hari?
Good evening, Katie. The 401 children are being housed behind me in this complex, and investigators are asking them exactly what happened in that ranch in El Dorado. Buses flanked by State Patrol squad cars have now brought 534 people from the reclusive compound of polygamists on the border of El Dorado, Texas. 133 women and 401 children. And the state says all the children need protection.
This is not about numbers. This is about children who are at imminent risk of harm, children that we believe have been abused or neglected.
The children now housed here at Fort Concho in San Angelo are part of the largest child removal action in Texas history. Each case individually reviewed for evidence that the children, if left with their parents, could be harmed.
That it was certainly enough that a district judge in the state of Texas determined that these children were at risk, and judges in Texas don't take those accusations lightly.
The accusations that triggered the search of the 1,700-acre compound came from phone calls made by a 16-year-old mother who claimed she was being abused after giving birth last year when she was just 15, and that her husband was a 50-year-old man. Authorities still don't know if they have her in custody. The followers are part of the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a breakaway group from the Mormon Church. They are polygamous followers led by Warren Jeffs, a self-proclaimed prophet now in prison on charges of arranging marriages between adult male followers and underage girls.
Well, from the time you're born, you're told how to think, you're told what to wear, what you can and can't do.
Lori Allen escaped a polygamous community in her 30s. She says it is a system based on mind control.
You are literally told when you go into marriage that you are to go in with your mind empty. Your husband will tell you everything that you need to do to get you to the celestial kingdom.
Yesterday, Pastor Andy Anderson drove a bus full of those women and children out of the compound.
In a few cases, there were tearful goodbyes.
And whether there will be any tearful reunions is going to be up to the court, because it'll be the court that decides what visitation rights, if any, that the fathers and husbands have as these proceedings continue. Katie?
Hari Srinivasan. Hari, thank you. John Llewellyn is a former deputy sheriff in Salt Lake City and himself a former polygamist. Mr. Llewellyn, this was a breakaway sect apparently called FLDS. What do you know about this particular sect?
Well, in the early 1920s, when a group of people decided to keep alive the practice of plural marriage, the FLDS was the central organization, and the other various fundamentalist groups have splintered off from the FLDS. So it's the largest and the oldest here in Utah.
You have said that this cult is filled with crime, corruption, and abuse. What makes you say that?
Because what they're really all about is power, sex, and money. And when you have that, you're going to have crime and corruption. I don't know that they have so much crime, but most of their corruption is involved in the brainwashing of children, the fallacy that they have the Word of God and that they're infallible, and that these children must be obedient to their priesthood. These little girls are raised to be nothing more than broodmares. That's all they're there for. They have no free will of their own.
Are there similar cults throughout the country like this one?
There are probably 4 main polygamous cults involving about 30,000 people. But this is the most isolated out of all of the groups. The others are more open.
John Llewellyn, Mr. Llewellyn, thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Turning now to the growing chorus of protests surrounding the Beijing Olympics. Today, Hillary Clinton called on President Bush to boycott the opening ceremonies in August because of China's crackdown in Tibet. This as demonstrators climbed the cables of the Golden Gate Bridge and unfurled Tibet's flag and hung 2 banners calling on China to restore home rule in Tibet. The Olympic torch arrives in San Francisco on Wednesday. Meanwhile, protesters in Paris today stopped the torch relay in its tracks. More now from Mark Phillips.
The Beijing Olympic organizers billed this worldwide torch relay the journey of harmony. Not. In Paris, French torchbearers had hardly set out from the Eiffel Tower when pro-Tibetan demonstrators began spoiling the party. What was supposed to be a celebration of Olympic spirit became a demonstration of tackling technique. Several times the torch had to be put out, while the 3,000-strong security force tried to clear a path through the protesters.
Many people are killing, and there's strong repression in Tibet.
In London, there'd been similar chaos, attempts to grab the torch, attempts to extinguish it. The Olympic torch is too tempting and too handy a target for those trying to highlight what they see as China's heavy-handed repression of nationalist demonstrators in Tibet. The Chinese admit 19 people were killed in its recent crackdown. The Tibetans say the death toll was well over 100. The Chinese, who have been hoping to use these games as a showcase for their newfound prosperity and power, have dismissed the protesters as a small group of Tibetan separatists. But this torch relay fiasco has been deeply embarrassing for them. And it may well unsettle the big Olympic corporate sponsors as well. The top 5 alone spent $500 million on the last games and are poised to spend a lot more this time. The risk of being tainted by association with Chinese policy has become a real one for these companies.
They're trying very hard not to seem like the bad guy, and I think a lot of the companies really do sympathize with the cause, but they're really not sure how to go about this because you don't want to tick off the Chinese government.
The demonstrators are already doing that. Mark Phillips, CBS News, London.
Now to the politics of free trade. President Bush asked Congress today to approve an agreement with Colombia before he leaves office. The president says Colombia is a crucial South American ally and the free trade deal is good for U.S. national security.
If Congress fails to approve this agreement, it would not only abandon a brave ally, it would send a signal throughout the region that America cannot be counted on to support its friends.
Most Democrats, including Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, opposed the trade deal, saying Colombia has not done enough to crack down on paramilitary groups or protect workers. Turning to the war in Iraq now, tomorrow the top U.S. commander there, General David Petraeus, will report once again to Congress. His appearance comes amid an increase in violence. 10 American soldiers have been killed in Iraq in the last 2 days, and the latest fighting threatens to further destabilize the country. Our chief foreign correspondent, Lara Logan, has the latest now from Baghdad.
There is no sign in Baghdad of a let-up in fighting between U.S. troops and Iranian-backed Shiite militants. The militia stronghold of Sadr City, home to Muqtada al-Sadr's Mehdi army, was burning again, spreading fear and threatening the stability of Iraq's capital. And in the southern city of Basra, the conflict that sparked the fighting in Baghdad also continued. But even as the wounded still poured into hospitals in Sadr City and the number of dead kept rising, it was the political fight that took center stage. Iraq's prime minister threatening to bar Sadr's party from local elections if the powerful cleric refuses to disband his Mehdi army. When Prime Minister Maliki announced he was going after militias in Basra, including Sadr's army, he was praised by the U.S. president.
The decision to move troops, Iraqi troops, into Basra talks about Prime Minister Maliki's leadership.
Some 2 weeks later, the militias are emboldened and Maliki's leadership is in question. The Mahdi army remains entrenched in Basra, and on the streets of Sadr City, the Prime Minister has never been more unpopular. This sign says, Maliki, your punishment will be in hell. He's widely seen as the loser in this fight against Sadr's followers, or Sadrists as they're called.
When President Bush has announced that al-Maliki is going through a very critical examination in Basra. So it was sure for us that al-Maliki came to Basra in order to pass the American examination.
Maliki's failure and the rise in violence come at a critical moment for U.S. policymakers. Until 2 weeks ago, America's top commander in Iraq, General David Petraeus, looked like he was heading to Washington with a success story. Now it's a very different picture. Laura Logan, CBS News, Baghdad.
And there is much more CBS News ahead, including the standoff between two California neighbors, why it isn't easy being green. But up next, our special series, Immigration Nation, crossing the border for the sake of their babies. One out of 8 people living in the United States today is an immigrant, the most since the 1920s. 11.5 million of them are here illegally, and that upsets many legal Americans. Just last year, lawmakers proposed more than 1,500 new immigration laws. It's a very difficult issue, especially when children are American citizens, but their parents are not. Our national correspondent Byron Pitts has one family story as we begin our special series, Immigration Nation.
It's 5 a.m. This woman's 9 months pregnant, an illegal immigrant fearful of deportation. She's dropped off at a South Texas hospital to undergo a C-section. It's a $4,700 procedure that didn't cost her a dime. A healthy 8.5-pound baby boy born in America. His Mexican mother gives him an American name, Elliot. He's one of an estimated 300,000 children of illegal immigrants born in the U.S. every year. They're given instant citizenship, which makes it easier for their parents to become U.S. citizens, because those babies can eventually sponsor their parents when they turn 21. As for Elliot's mother, no longer as fearful of deportation, she tells us her name, Fabiola, and her story.
So your son is an American citizen. What does that mean?
I'm glad he was born here. That's why I came here, so my children, my husband, and I could have a better life.
Back in December, when she was 6 months pregnant, Fabiola, her husband, and their 2 daughters, ages 4 and 11, crossed the Rio Grande from Mexico into the U.S. Once across, they walked for 2 hours in search of a better life and free medical care for their unborn child.
Help me understand. Do many women in Mexico make the choice to have their children in the United States?
Yes, I know people who have done that. Things are better in the U.S. because they help children so much more.
It's a better life American taxpayers help pay for. Take health care, for example. An estimated $1.1 billion per year for all undocumented men, women, and children. Joe Riley is the CEO of the McAllen, Texas Medical Center near the Texas-Mexico border. 40% of the children born here, nearly 2,400 last year, were the babies of illegal immigrants. Riley has seen and heard it all.
Mothers about to give birth that walk up to the hospitals still wet from swimming across the river and in actual labor.
But here to have a child in the U.S.
Here to have a child in the U.S.
McAllen, which is part of a large hospital system, like all hospitals, is mandated by law to treat all emergency room patients, not verify citizenship.
We have uncompensated care of over $200 million last year.
$200 million?
Yes.
Of money that you won't ever see again?
Yes.
It's not fair to the taxpayers who have to foot the bill.
This Congress has all but given up on comprehensive immigration reform. But lawmakers like Lamar Smith of Texas want to challenge the 14th Amendment, which guarantees U.S. citizenship to any child born in America.
It seems fundamentally wrong that we ought to give the greatest honor our country can bestow, citizenship, to a child whose only connection to this country is that his or her mother came across the border illegally.
Many Americans who struggle to take care of their own families think it is unfair that they should take care of a family and they're not U.S. citizens.
I don't really understand the resentment, but I know that God will find a way to help them too.
That's what Fabiola's doing for young Elliot, relying on her faith, her family, and the U.S. government. Byron Pitts, CBS News, McAllen, Texas.
And tomorrow night, federal officials hope a huge border fence will convince many illegal immigrants to stay home. But will it really work? We'll examine that as we continue our series, Immigration Nation. Meanwhile, some scary news today about kids and medicine. A new report says a surprising number of children in the hospital are harmed by overdoses, medical mix-ups, or bad reactions to drugs. It affects roughly 1 in 15 hospitalized children. That's about 540,000 every year. Experts recommend greater vigilance by both parents and hospital employees. Coming up next, if you're not happy with air travel, get in line. Why passengers say last year was the worst ever. There is more bad news for airline passengers tonight. A new survey shows customer complaints last year soared to record levels. Thalia Shuris reports on what's causing the trouble in the air and the anger on the ground.
Turbulence in the airline industry is at an all-time high.
This year was the worst year ever for the U.S. airline industry.
And according to the just-released Airline Quality Rating Study, passengers are fed up. Compared to the previous year, there were fewer on-time flights.
Waiting and waiting, never really knowing for sure if you'll take off on time or land on time.
There were more passengers bumped because of overbooked flights and more lost luggage.
Bags don't come, you ask what's going on, they say just be quiet and stand there.
And there were more complaints about service, nearly 11,000 up from 6,500.
I definitely don't like the personnel. I just don't think they're helpful. I don't think they're polite. I think they're really rude.
The worst offenders were Atlantic Southeast, American Eagle, and Comair. Providing the best quality of service, AirTran, JetBlue, and Southwest, all low-cost carriers. The dismal report card comes as the airline industry faces safety problems, rising fuel prices, and bankruptcies. Last week alone, 3 carriers, ATA, Aloha, and Skybus, shut down under financial pressures, leaving thousands of travelers stranded.
Skybus has ceased operations.
And there's no sign the skies will get any friendlier anytime soon.
And unfortunately, I think the direction is that we are going to get worse before we get better.
As for the airlines, they had no comment on today's report except to say they'll try harder. Katie?
All right, Thalia Shuris. Thalia, thank you. When we come back, how 2 neighbors trying to go green ended up seeing red. And finally tonight, how green is your neighbor? That's the question raging in one corner of the country, and it ended up being answered in court. Ben Tracy explains from Sunnyvale, California.
How important are these to you?
Solar panels are very important.
Mark Vargas was trying to do his part for the planet by installing 128 solar panels on his roof at a cost of $70,000.
Solar power is very important, not only to me, but to the environment.
Unfortunately for him, nature got in his way.
And trees are beautiful. Those solar panels are not.
Richard Trainer lives across the fence, drives a hybrid car. 10 years ago, he planted these redwoods to provide privacy. Now they had his neighbor seeing red.
He called us over the fence one day and said, I am going to be installing solar panels, and therefore you have to take your trees down.
The problem was that the trees would block the sun, reducing power to the panels, so the neighbors went to court.
But it was an all-out assault on all of our trees.
As it turns out, the law was on the side of the sun. The California Solar Shade Act requires homeowners to keep their trees from shading more than 10% of their neighbors' solar panels between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m.
The experts determined that 15% of Mark's solar panels were being shaded by those trees. That meant the trees were in violation and the neighbors that owned them, criminals.
We were convicted of 1 count of violation of the California Shade Act.
By court order, Traynor had to give one of his offending trees a shave. With solar panels now big business in California, legal experts say the fighting has just begun.
As solar panels become more and more cost effective, you're going to see more and more disputes between homeowners of this nature.
Reasonable people who both care for the environment should have been able to find a resolution here.
But that, of course, would require an inconvenient truce. Ben Tracy, CBS News, Sunnyvale, California.
So much for loving thy neighbor. And that is the CBS Evening News. I'm Katie Couric. Thank you for watching. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Good night.
For news 24 hours a day, click on CBSNews.com.